why attend this conference? First of all, narrow down your focus, expand your focus at the same time. Be curious about what other people are saying and then bring in these new insights in a way that then you can work expertly on the field that you are focusing on, whether it's applied or whether it's philosophical, whether you're in research or whether you're working with clients, either way.
There are 7 billion people in the world. Not everyone's going to get this.
All right. We are live. Great morning, great afternoon, great evening, wherever this conversation finds you. I am Travis Gray. This is Gray Transforms. And today we are blessed to be transforming with another great guest. This is Dr. Dorote Lucci of the Global Mental Health Conference and Sophia University. Dr. Lucci, Dorote has been so inspirational to me. I've had such a resonance with her over the years. We've had this mirroring thing that has been just so fruitful and nourishing for me professionally and personally. And I'm just so glad to have you. Dr. Lucci, how are you?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Thank you for the welcome there. Dr. Travis, Dr. Travis Gray. Yes, we've had a long road together at Sophia University and as practitioners, as professors, as teachers, philosophers,
We
inquirers.
wear all the hats.
We wear all the hats, and also I think we both have one thing in common that is really important to mention, I think, as we start this conversation, and that is this focus on whole person, whole systems, the transpersonal, what it means, what it brings to people. It's almost like it hasn't been spoken enough for so many reasons, because it gets so complicated and because people always disagree about what it is. And then we end up in these long, arduous conversations. And somehow I think we've both found that there's an easy flow to it.
Yeah.
And that it really isn't that complicated, and that it's important to bring it into other areas. Like you're teaching and in business as well. Now I have been for a while, and in computer science and psychology in general, and practitioners, therapists, and so on.
Absolutely. I think we've definitely had a common understanding of what transpersonal psychology means and the potential impact that this has globally, and also the desire for it to be ever more practical, ever more applicable to the lives of everyone that could be positively influenced and transformed by the field. And so I've loved what you've been doing with the Global Mental Health Conference, and that is going to be coming up here August 17th. You have a one-day full online session for the conference. It's going to be amazing. It's packed with great guests. But this Global Mental Health Conference, this idea was sparked in you several years ago.
This will be our 3rd year. We started with it was one day, all online. And then last year we did this mega conference series. So we actually said, okay, let's try it out in person in different places. So we were in the UK, in England, in London. We were in South Korea. And so we were in Shanghai. And then, of course, we were in Costa Mesa at Sophia University's campus there. And we did 3 days in person here. And so it was a very rich experience to do it that way, because our outlook has always been global and local. Difficulty in that is, how do we bring those things together, and how do we honor the different perspectives that come into, this field of mental health? And it's really mental health initiative in the sense that, bringing in a whole person, whole systems, we're bringing in the whole systems. That means that, a lot of different people need to come in and have a word. And when we say we, like, who is we? Well, Sophia University, yes. And then our president, Dr. Carol Humphreys, gave this a really good push at the start, I want to say. And then, of course, we have Yali Wang and Chris Wang, who are also, I want to say, partners in crime here. And Yali Wang is also our VP, international VP, global engagement. And so we try to bring in all of these different cultural perspectives and backgrounds.
The Sophia University community, the people involved in all of that, the field of transpersonal psychology as a whole, the ways that you've been able to travel and connect multiculturally, even with like the European Transpersonal Psychology Association or locally in the Association of Transpersonal Psychology, and have these seminars globally. I don't think any university, to my knowledge, is doing it multiculturally to the degree that Sophia University has been doing it. We have amazing international students. Our MBA program is full of international students from many different cultural backgrounds and countries. And it's just an incredible initiative to really be collective in the healing of global mental health. It's not just about us here in our small corner of the world. It's really an outreach to be encompassing of the many cultures, inclusive of many cultures, and that's so important. Another aspect to that is that it is multidisciplinary. That was we went to a common conference in Oxford, and a lot of that conference was centered around this multidisciplinary focus. And to be multidisciplinary, starting with mental health, is everything that the world needs, especially right now as we enter new frames of mind. Our world is expanding at such a ridiculous pace that it is so important that we have the right mental health standards, that focus, journey, route, guidance, so that we can move in the right direction. Otherwise, this whole thing just kind of implodes and it swallows itself.
Yeah, speaking to that, in this multidisciplinary, multi-geographical approach has been extremely rich. So we've had deep transpersonal conversations, the consciousness conversations around really understanding who we are. So it's cosmology. Like, where do we come from? What are the stories of our coming to as humans? Going from there to how do we apply that? We've had also fireside chats in between to like really keep the conversation going. So there's been Dr. Boza-san, I keep thinking about her, who, has come in with some really interesting methodologies of taking this cosmology, this consciousness approach, and then applying it not only to business, but also to investing and to what happens with technology now moving forward. And then in China, what was also so rich in the global conference there was these different wisdom traditions that came out, where we had experts from the fields of Taoism, Chan Buddhism, and also technology experts, and philosophers who had studied, for example, in Germany, and I had gotten their PhD in Germany, and then were there, speaking to the philosophical background to what's happening in the world and what's evolving. And then also, in South Korea, I wanted to say that there was this sweet spot in South Korea. So tomorrow night, we're having another fireside chat with an expert from South Korea who has put together this inquiry game with cards. And so you pull these cards, and then there's questions, and you get together in groups, and then you share these questions. Everybody pulls one, and it's like a communal game that brings people together. Inquiry is not always easy. So what does that mean? Maybe for people who don't know what inquiry is just a style of curiosity, of application, that where you have things that are open-ended, right? So you don't close. You leave this conversation and you keep on having more conversation. And it actually works really well. It's a skill. It's actually a skill.
Many
There
modes
there
of the ways that we ask questions, right?
Yeah. That's right. Yes, it is the ways we ask questions, because we're looking to keep the thread open. Actually, in transpersonal leadership, there's also a way of doing this. Like we use that in the DBA, the Doctorate of Business Administration at Sophia. It's like we keep that thread open. It's like, how do you do that? It's a skill, because I think human reaction is to want to close it immediately, right? So that was something that we looked at when we were in South Korea. We were introduced to their way of doing it, and we're continuing exploring this. And that's also something that's come out of this experience, is that there's continuous conversations. So we're never done. We have more and more. And like I said, the experience in Seoul was very sweet, because they're very sensitive people and very deep-minded, and it was very rich. It was extremely rich everywhere else too. And then we came to Costa Mesa, and same type of thing, right? Like you said, multidisciplinary. We had everything from going into this embodied wisdom around food and body liberation, right? So I won't forget that. And those types of deep conversations. And then, my goodness, we had experts from Columbia University come in and speak about anxiety around testing, for example. And so, what does it mean? And how can we provide platforms and ways of alleviating this, because it's so prevalent in our cultures, and in our education system, and because the transpersonal pedagogy is really not that. So, oh my God, you were there.
Yeah, I was there. There are so many ways to inquire, and many fields are inquiring in unique ways. But some of the limitation comes when a field is narrowly inquiring only in their singular way and determined to inquire in that singular way, limiting the scope of what can be learned and what can be discovered through those ways of questioning. So what transpersonal psychology has often done, and I have a podcast that'll come out soon with Jim Fadiman. So
wonderful.
Next week, I'll have a podcast with Jim Fadiman. Great Transforms just passed 50 conversations, so this will be 51.
Congratulations!
Thank you so much. And I guess this conversation is technically 51. Maybe that'll be 52. And then, so Jim Fadiman, when he was describing transpersonal psychology, he spoke about it as the what is this wave again? I just lost the thought. What's
Fourth
this?
wave.
No,
Is it the
no,
fourth wave?
this like this graph, this
camel bump.
yeah, camel hump. Yeah. Man, I forget what that's called. Anybody in the chat can tell me what that's called? Do you guys remember what that is? Tracy Schwartz is here. Nice to see you, Tracy.
Hi, Tracy.
So I forget what this is called, man. It just the idea that he was trying to communicate is that psychology or mental health, especially in this conventional stream, is often looking at sick people to fix sick people, looking down on, condescending on behaviorist approaches, it can be very material approaches, which are not all bad. It's not all villainous or anything, but it's just this very one way of looking at it's limiting. Exactly. And then there's this area of people that are, quite normal, that can also benefit in their everyday lives. They can benefit from mindfulness, adding mindfulness to their practices, adding some knowledge of dream work or these different things in neuroscience and somatic approaches, and all kinds of fields can come together to help them live an even higher quality of life than they're already living. And then there's these outliers on this other side of that continuum where they are extraordinary in and of themselves. And Abraham Maslow, in the founding of this field, was interested in that small knit group of people that are living extraordinary lives their ways of being, their ways of being whole. And like, how's this self-actualizing person, how are they whole? What's the kind of lifestyle, or what are the values? What are the principles? What are the ways that we can learn from this life to inform sick people and other people that would also benefit from this higher quality of life? How can we kind of raise the frequency of everybody by looking at the full range of human experience? That is what transpersonal psychology is all about.
The labeling is useful at times, like in clinical psychology, but then it's questionable because it can become an identity, right? Which then it's no longer useful. And so this year we have Dr. Scott Barry Kaufman, who has been looking at that for quite a while and has put a system into place where, use identifiers in a certain way without them becoming labels, right? Which that's a task within itself. And I know that we could probably have a longer conversation about this.
Scott Barry Kaufman, that is a wonderful keynote speaker at the Global Mental Health Conference. What an incredible guest to have on there. He is the host of the Psychology Podcast. How are you such an early pioneer into the podcasting space that you get to pick the Psychology Podcast? Really great. I think I have 2 of his books. I think one is on creativity.
I think his last book is Transcend, right? I mean,
Transcend,
it is like he just put he just put that right out there. And actually his talk is going to be the science of self-actualization and realizing your full potential. Amazing. So we have something to look forward to in that way, exactly in the way you were speaking to it. And this comes and continues the tradition of having these conversations. And some conversations have also been more critical, like Dr. Tanya Luhrmann, who we've had several times from Stanford University, who really looks at, when is there a distortion? When is there a moment where you're having an exceptional human experience and it's no longer rooted at all in a sort of, how would you say that? Accessible frame of mind. Let's call it that. And then we've also had people like, I'm thinking of Dr. Paul Koritsa, so we might as well mention him too, because he is such an expert in schizophrenia. But speaking about schizophrenia in a positive manner as well as being clinical, he is also interested in how can we help people to find a personal solution. You have his books there too. I have it somewhere.
I know his book is like very close. So that's what I was looking for.
And he just wrote another one. He's extremely prolific, and he loves Greek mythology and uses that to explore creativity and, of course, archetypes and how do they live and continue showing themselves in our lives. Which, by the way, little anecdote for his dissertation. I don't know if you ever saw that. He drew a whole picture of all of the people on the board of his dissertation where like different archetypes. It's we had, sort of this, I think Dr. Marilyn Schlitz was like a muse emerging from the waters, and it was just fabulous.
I think I might have seen that.
Yeah, and so those are some sort of small anecdotes that come out of our transpersonal community. But again, so in London when we were there, we also spoke and had interaction with the founder of Aleph Trust.
See, the founder of Aleph Trust, Les Lancaster, also been on the Great Transforms podcast, is really great.
There you go.
I don't want to just skip over Dr. Marilyn Schlitz. What an incredible guide that she has been over across all of our journeys. And she is also going to be speaking at the Global Mental Health Conference again
this year. She talked about creativity last year with some others, and it was actually it was really beautiful. We also had her speak together with Pierluigi Latuada, who is the president of Eurotas. So that's
Right.
a European Transpersonal Association. So for people who are outside of the field, just somebody who is incredibly beautiful and also made a movie last year about these conscious experiences, about transcending. What does that look like?
Just published a fiction book. She,
There you go.
she's incredibly prolific
Yeah, and he
also, right?
writes poetry too.
Right.
So
Yeah. Incredibly skilled and talented scholars all over this conference. So the theme for the conference is a whole person and whole systems future. What does this mean to you?
we struggled with naming the conference this year.
Mm,
And, to be fully, to disclose the
really
backgrounds. I mean,
transparent.
all these, yes, fully transparent. All these things have stories, and this one was really like, what are we doing here again? Right? So every year we ask ourselves, what are we doing here? And last year we're like, okay, let's go out there and let's meet everybody in their places and ask them the questions that we've wanted to ask and bring it together. And what is the community there? And this year we're like, okay, so we have done so much and we continue. So I invite you to go to our website and the Global Conference, Sophia University Global Conference website. And there we have constant podcasts. There's more constantly coming. And so then we went like, this year, what are we doing? So it was like, okay, we're bridging. We're bridging everything we have, and we're continuing in this vein. So we called it Bridging Cultures, Bridging Futures, because it is an intercultural dialogue we're having, and we are looking for solutions for a new age. So it's not new age per se, but we're like literally saying things are changing. So what do we do with that, right? So as Dr. Mary Kay Chess would say, who has also been a part of the global conference experience throughout the years, it's a VUCA world of, it's a volatility, uncertainty, it's complexity. It's, how do we even deal with that? So we're trying to provide solutions that are slightly different, out of the box thinking. And you asked about whole systems. Whole systems is incredibly important. Why? Because everything that we do here affects somebody else, like right next to us. And there's nothing that we can do that doesn't affect another person, another being, or even within ourselves, right? We are whole systems. I mean, our body, our biology is whole systems, right? If we, go out running, it doesn't affect just our feet. So I mean, our whole system benefits from that, and our skin is outside and there's sun shining on the skin, which then changes a whole plethora of things for ourselves, and is a great thing. So whole systems is really this idea from us as people as whole systems to being engaged with society, with family, with a community, and then beyond that. So because that community and its actions will affect the next community and its actions, and so on and so forth. But then we also have it backwards. So goodness. And then, of course, let's not forget things like eco-psychology, which means, the earth, sustainability. So one of our speakers this year, Stuart Sarkozy Bankozy, is coming in and speaking about, the ocean, blue ocean. And that is an incredibly important conversation as well. Then we have things, that are classic, measuring the ineffable. So we've just spent a lot of time talking about this, right? So it's like in whole systems, we have these things that we don't see. And that's, again, the transpersonal. So can quantitative science capture transcendence?
Yep.
So that's, for example, Dr. Harris Friedman and Dr. Doug McDonald are also, I don't want to call them grandfathers. I don't think they would like that. But like the fathers also of transpersonal psychology, right? Yeah, okay, so I could go on, but this was kind of the thinking that we had behind this title this year. We're just trying to bridge.
I hear you, and it's, it kind of summed up in a system is the sum of its parts, and there are many parts to be incorporated in proper mental health. The encompassing, the inclusive, the comprehensive approach to mental health in the world that we need today more than ever. Our socio-political chaos that we experience on it, we are radically both sides of everything, are radically doing all kinds of stuff. If we are going to have a comprehensive approach
Yes.
to mental health, it needs to include as many parts as we can.
Yes.
And that is going to require a multidisciplinary approach as well. It
Yes.
requires multiple, it requires more than single-mindedness. It needs people that are experts in a variety of realms coming together to continue this conversation that the Global Mental Health Conference has continued this conversation.
Yeah, so, speaking of that, one important element, of course, is bringing in the artificial intelligence. So we're also having a panel discussion on transforming mental health research and storytelling in the digital age. So Dr. Jerry Lynn Hugg, who is an expert in the field, and of course, Dr. Skip Rizzo, who's also an expert in the field, they're going to bring in a whole panel of experts to dig around that. And like you said, it's all a conversation. We don't have to agree.
Right.
But the conversation piece is the important bit, right? It is chaos because, chaos in itself is not a bad thing. Although some people would like to tame it, and then, it doesn't necessarily work because, life has its own entropy. And this brings us back to whole systems. A whole person's whole systems is just, maybe that's also a very all-encompassing approach, which is to understand that there's something arising. And that's the participatory spirituality. And Jorge Ferrer, who also spoke last year about this, right? And the importance of respecting that. And what is it even? So people will say, what do you mean by that? Like, really? And this is the whole thing where it gets interesting with ego, and not losing ego, because you really can't, but incorporating or embodying or integrating ego in such a way that it no longer pulls you. And then the question becomes not what do I want to happen, but rather what wants to happen right now. And that's something I think that Jorge Ferrer, with that whole approach of participatory spirituality, has been very strong, and Huron, of course, as well. And that conversation is ongoing.
Yeah, what an important aspect that you just brought up is that it's okay for us to disagree.
Yes.
Like what an important and undervalued aspect of any healthy conversation is that it is okay to not agree. Like we don't have to be in circles sitting around each other resonating all day. It doesn't have to just be this, oh man, we're just resonating. We're just hanging out and resonating. Because a lot of action doesn't
The
really
bliss
happen.
heads. The bliss heads.
The bliss heads, yeah, we're just we're blissed out, resonating, and that's great. And like there's a time and a place for that too. It feels good to be around like-minded people that you can resonate with, that you can mirror, reflect, appreciate, affirm the things that you do know. But it's so important, even more so important, to expand your thinking, to incorporate things that you don't already know, and learn perspectives from others that are different than your own. Just that aspect of being able to disagree, that only is going to really happen if you are in a space of people that are multidisciplinary, or they just kind of, they think differently than you do. You're not going to be able to, I think maybe people can be in these spaces of resonance and say, oh no, I'm okay with disagreements, until a disagreement actually pops up into that conversation. And they're like, oh, you didn't realize how not
Yeah.
okay with disagreements you are. But you need the experience of being in a, a space where there are many unique minds that are coming together. Now, an important common goal, mental health, actualizing mental health, that's important. And so that can be the highest values that we are trying to raise the frequency of mental health globally. That can be this higher value, but below that, it's okay for us to not agree on what exactly that might mean. It's okay that we are coming to, some people are going to be more focused on the ocean. If the ocean is saved, if the water is clean, if the sea is, the coral reefs and all of these things are saved, then that is going to have a rippling effect on the rest of nature. It's going to have that butterfly effect that we need in the world. Some are going to believe that. They're going to have that eco-psychology approach, and others are going to have a more neuroscientific approach of, if we can measure all of the right stages of somebody's ideal mental state, we might be able to map that and create that over and over again, so that more people can experience that higher mental state that is going to, resolve a lot of their pain and these things. Then maybe that is another approach. But both of those things can also coexist, and many other things can coexist in a way that is still moving towards that highest value. And you've done so good, you and of course your team, the team at Sophia University, everybody involved, Dr. Carol Humphreys, Chris Wang, all of the people that are involved in the team, to bring all of these different minds into the same space. You've been so good at being able to do that. And you have a very multicultural background experience. So what is it that has gleaned kind of a talent or a skill set in being able to interact so multiculturally for you and bring in all of these different minds?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think a part of it is just curiosity. I mean, we started we started a conversation with that and just jumping in. And Jaewon tomorrow, we'll explore that aspect of inquiry from a Korean perspective, South Korean perspective. And then just noticing that there is no place that has the entire solution.
So,
And I
so
think
you
that,
personally, you've always been
yeah,
curious.
absolutely. And I think all of the people, who work with us, from Yali to Chris to, whoever, you know, is with us in these explorations. They're always curious,
Mhm.
you know. And then we have those who may not be, who are guests and who are still curious, even though they have a firm opinion in certain ways. Like, and that also makes it interesting, because Dr. Seifeng Zhu, who is our head, our chair of the Chinese department, PhD department, also has a certain flavor of open-mindedness. And Dr. Harris Friedman has another flavor of open-mindedness. And we've had them in the fireside chat together. And I need to bring and put that all together in writing. But that was a really interesting conversation, because they don't agree. And they don't have to.
So much fun when it's that way.
Yeah, and because they have a different, but honestly, when I look at it, and that was sort of the question, like, I just find the conversation interesting. And what goes back, and within that conversation, there's a truth. And that's the thing that fascinates me, right? It's the truth, and it's changing, it's morphing, and yet It's steady and definitely there. So from a philosophical perspective, we can look at it this way. And then from an application perspective, we can use that curiosity and that sense of questioning and holding at the same time for being present in our lives, in business, in organizational psychology and wherever else we are acting. So there's another person, Dr. Pierre Morin. He really has been carrying on the flame for Arnie Mindell, who is the founder of Process Work. And what is beautiful about that is exactly what the things that we've been talking about. It is this emergent quality, participatory spirituality, and then some, because there's shamanism and there's also a background in Taoist thought, and then there's this mix in applied somatic psychology, and bringing all that together is an art form. And it's difficult to talk about it because it's palpable, but you have to be there and you have to witness it. And so he's coming in this time speaking about healthcare versus sick care, thinking and experiencing towards a new process-oriented medicine. So really, because he's also an MD, right? So really going for that healthcare approach. This whole conversation is that curiosity, and I've landed in that. But frankly, it's also a way to survive, because
Right.
I've grown up all over everywhere, and so I'm definitely a third culture kid. I don't know how many cultures I have in between, but a lot of them. And so I know that there's no one system that is right, and they just have different structures, and there's a problem when they stop talking.
That's interesting that the way that you just put it there. My background in deaf culture, with my
Yes.
mother being deaf and things like that, maybe that is where I made that same sort of unconscious realization that there is no one way that works, because I've recognized in my experience none of the way, like, a majority of the ways that the hearing world, or the kind of regular ordinary world exists, is not working for deaf people, or for this one specific community of people that has been so important to me in my life, as it is, has birthed me, has raised me. So that's really interesting how you put that. Being in these different cultures, you do come to recognize that there's not any one way to do these things. I think that's why I would love to see more Americans having passports and going to other countries and visiting these places and having experiences like this. The people that are, wherever you are in the world, if you are able to join a global mental health conference of minds of all of these different cultures, there's just so much to gain from that. So I understand that in the conference you have transformative formats, you have fireside chats, dream labs, community conversations. What can you tell me about what is an anti-conference? What do you mean by that?
Oh, well, part of it, and we always have this is also difficult, to bring in this concept of it. Again, it's curiosity, right? I think is the main driving force here. Because when things get too rigidified in a format, I think then people fall asleep. And so we always try to have dialogue in one form or another. Even when we do the fireside chats, we always have, we open it up, or you can bring in your questions and we welcome them and look at and try to see things from many different perspectives as to what we're doing. We did one with Dr. Bonnie Buckner on dreams, and that was a very powerful session where we just sat and talked, and then there were questions. And so the anti conference is really not an anti anything, because if you're anti, then you're like, but
It's not like opposing something.
It's not opposing something, but it is a bit the concept of participatory spirituality. We're
Yeah.
working with, the emergent in the room.
Kind of like, let's step away from the rigid
Yes,
structure of what we think it's supposed to be.
exactly. And then let's see what comes up. And that's something deeply transpersonal. It's really hard to pull off. So there's another project actually that we've been working on with several researchers, and it's the AI for whole person healthcare, which we will just do a research project update. Everybody has their research that they're doing, and we're bringing it together to hopefully provide a platform for people to enjoy whole person healthcare in a way that they want. So it's the conversation with the conversation with the conversation. And I said, somebody asked the other day, aren't you afraid that you have competitors? And we're like, no. Who on earth is going to want to do this? It is so complicated and so challenging from that perspective that there's no way that anybody else is going to do this. Also, with people who come from the space of whole person healthcare and transpersonal based, it's just very difficult to do that. In other words, all the anti is really not necessarily anti, but leaving curiosity open and still being critical, using critical thinking, using excellence, using, being entirely sharp-minded as well as open-hearted, and all of that all in one. So being open-minded and curious and letting something emerge doesn't mean you're stupid. But there is sometimes people make that assumption. You're just going with the flow type of thing. Yes and no. It's very hard to just go with the flow, for one. And for two, it doesn't mean that you have just, checked out in some sort of way. It actually means that you have focused in on where you're supposed to be. And that is sacred. And so we're trying to do the same thing. So I don't know what you would call that. I'm not sure what the terminology be for that. So maybe we still have to find one.
It's wonderful just like going to conferences. I remember the first conference that I had the opportunity to attend in person. I was in Prague. It was my first time outside of the country. I had a little stop in Denmark, like a layover, 24-hour layover in Copenhagen, Denmark, and then I was in Prague 4 days before the conference, 4 days of conference, 4 days after, representing Sophia University at this conference. I was manning the table, giving out information, that kind of thing. Such a experientially opening experience, to be in the space of other like-minded people or other, we talked a lot about that resonance piece in the beginning, but just to admire the curiosity of others, admiring the effort, the perseverance, the curiosity. People are dedicating their lives to opening up, learning new things, expanding the base of knowledge that we have as human beings for the benefit of other human beings. And to be in a conference, in an audience where you're listening to talks and being in an audience with others, it's so incredible. And then there's like so many great pieces of a conference that are happening outside of the talks, that happen in the hallways on the way to another talk. Like that's a conference in and of itself, is like this interwoven thread of mini conferences happening on the way to the next conference. It's so beautiful. Now, you do some of that is like not there in like a virtual space, an online space. But the Global Mental Health Conference, this started out online. You had all of the traveling, you had the opportunity to have it in Costa Mesa. I was there. I spoke at that conference. I spoke at the online one the first time as well. And then to do this online again, and now this is just one day, one conference day. It's on a Sunday, August 17th. I'm going to put this.
And we're going to start really super early So we
starting
have
early.
the European speakers. I want to give a shout out thank you, Travis, to Yulia Stelnover, who's bringing in the internal development goals and implementation in higher education. So that's a whole topic.
Awesome.
Dr. Steve Taylor, who's also, a very well-known transpersonalist from the UK, speaking about future possibilities and challenges for humanity.
So
And then we
I just
go like way late.
Yeah, amazing. And lovely to kind of if you wanted to share more about who is going to be in attendance for this conference, it'd be great. I just want to ask you this question about your personal experience of attending conferences and how valuable that has been for you.
Oh, it's invaluable. I mean, it's invaluable. I just think it always sparks something. And I think we all need that spark at regular intervals in our lives. And the spark also comes from hearing different people speak about different topics. So again, this idea of multidisciplinary, of multi-regional, and then having these juxtapositions sparks. And for me, it's key. And then of course the humanity of it, it's connections, communication, exchange, growth.
Why do you think somebody should attend this global mental health conference?
I think it's important to be a part of the conversation. I mean, I think it's important that to be exchanging, to be thoughtful, to be ready to implement, the changes that are necessary for all of us moving forward. But before we do that, we need to have conversations about how we're going to do it. And different people need to do different things. And so there's such a wide array of what is necessary at the moment that we can take any pick. So why attend this conference? First of all, narrow down your focus, expand your focus at the same time. Be curious about what other people are saying and then bring in these new insights in a way that then you can work expertly on the field that you are focusing on, whether it's applied or whether it's philosophical, whether you're in research or whether you're working with clients, either way. And again, we have some amazing submissions from exploring the role of AI and facilitating spiritual and existential inquiries with a chatbot that's Yuji Azu. Turning point spiral groups, storytelling as a narrative systems method for transpersonal and bilingual meaning making and transformation. And so, these things I just say them like this, but it's mind blowing actually what that means. Because for a second, if you picture that, there's all this transformation going on in bilingual spaces. And we don't take enough time usually to appreciate just that. And I want to say at Sophia, we're kind of used to it because we are in a global education environment. So we have this conversation a lot. And the challenges that come with it, like how do we have proper translation? How do we make sure that we're communicating with students, thought leaders? How do we incorporate this material that is coming in a totally different way? And maybe it's more poetic or maybe it's less poetic, and yet it's still like something that is mind-blowing. So how do we give it justice in both ways, right? So that's a complexity to that. Acute stress disorder and dream psychotherapy, a treatment approach to reducing the progression of PTSD. I could go on and on. Oh, a great panel, The Invisible Connection, a transpersonal perspective of Eastern, Caribbean, and American spiritual diversity. So this is another panel submission. And the AI revolution is here, transforming international business education for a digital first world, and urgency to include mental health as a key global priority in the UN Sustainable Development Goals. That's Dr. Dina Ziadlou.
Yeah.
And
I just want to
on and
say,
on.
yeah, on and on,
Really.
absolutely. I just want to say again, like Sophia University, through yourself, through the team behind you, through the team interwoven into all of those parts, all of those pieces, makes every effort to allow the opportunity to be experienced of this conference, the information to be experienced, to be learned, to be received by cultures all over the world. It makes every effort to incorporate as many people as we can, and I don't see any other institution doing it that way. It's just, I've never heard of it. I've never seen it. It might be out there, but they're definitely not doing it in transpersonal psychology. They're not doing it
Yes.
with this degree of uh, of like very unique, sometimes niche topics and areas of interest, and bringing all of those together. It's incredible. Like what a
Philosophical smorgasbord.
yeah, philosophical smorgasbord. That's great. What an incredible amount of gratitude that I have to be a part of this community, and so grateful to have you a part of the community as well, and doing all that you are doing. The Global Mental Health Conference, I could not show this and put it up here enough, but SophiaGlobalConference.com, great speakers on there, the host of Psychology Podcast, as notable of a name as you could have, and many other unique names that maybe you haven't heard of. Maybe you
That's
haven't
right.
heard of their work. So it's like, it's the full gamut, the full spectrum of opportunity to see speakers and learn new things.
So as we go into the night there, because we're gonna finish at like 10:40 at night, because we're finishing one part of the conference, and then we said we want to open up for our Asian colleagues and the other side of the European colleagues.
Yeah.
And then we have also participants from Vietnam giving a talk on integrating need theories and the pathway to transcendence, also from National University in Vietnam. And
Yeah.
so, yes, please come and just enjoy. Grab it's a coffee or tea and relax and sit back, or you can continue listening to it maybe on headphones as you go for a walk, and then come back in with your questions, because I'm sure that there'll be questions. And then, of course, the practical aspect, like how do you want to implement some of the learning that you've done, and then go from there. And we invite you, to submit. Like, we have rolling submissions. So this is an ongoing thing. Like, throughout the year, we have the fireside chats, and we want to engage with the communities out there to see, what else can we explore? What other solutions can we find to bring about this this really hopefully very nice new age where we live with inspiration and fulfillment in
With
whatever
spark.
we're doing. Yeah, spark. Okay, and one more thing. I have to say, Dr. Travis Gray, you have this amazing background and this incredible sense, and I think it is because your experience with the deaf community, and I look forward to more of your work, because there's a cutting edge to that in this VUCA world, where we need more emphasis on this multi-sensory experience, and what does that mean in terms of culture, the neurodiversity of it all. And, we haven't spoken that much about it now. And I don't mean that in a way to cut out anybody in any way, shape, or form, but rather to make our experience for all of us more complex and more colorful.
Incorporate the multi complexities
Yes.
of the human experience.
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for this conversation. Tracy, who has been Tracy Schwartz, who has been
Hi,
live with us
Tracy.
this whole
I
conversation,
know.
which
Thank you.
I absolutely is wonderful and appreciate. Tracy mentioned in a comment about the conference, it's a great opportunity to network too.
Yeah.
Now, when you are online virtually, you're on Zoom, you're in these conferences, I think that there is a unique skill set in really making an effort to to network. So you can be active and engaging in that chat on Zoom. Give your reactions, actually engage with the platform. As much as you engage with that platform is as much benefit and feedback and that's as much as you will get back from it by actually engaging, participating in those conversations. So it's not just it's on Zoom and you're sitting back and just letting sounds come out of your computer, but can you actually engage in the conversation? Chat in the chat. Can you network with people that way? Send somebody a direct message and continue to connect with people. And I love that like skill set. I've loved that opportunity of like I'm so much trying to engage in all the spaces, but in Zoom it's a very unique like hard
Yeah, it
hurdle
is.
to overcome. But you can totally
Yes.
do that. Ask for their
Yes.
email or connect with whoever's interesting. A lot of these speakers will probably have their contact information at the end of their presentations and things like that. So they're offering and giving the opportunity to connect further with their work, further with just continuing this conversation. So thank you so much for putting on this global mental health conference. Once again, I'll put it right
There
there.
it is. Thank you.
SophiaGlobalConference.com. Yeah, thank you everybody that joined this conversation today, has watched this conversation. We're going to keep
Thank
the
you,
conversation going.
Tracy. And yes, we love you too. So honored. And yes, conferences are so inspiring and the energy is infectious. And she always walks away with applications for myself and my clients. Yes. And that is, that is the whole point, and encouraging discernment. Having these sometimes disagreements, and that's okay. And to be, at peace with that. And yes, thank you. And I hope to see you all. Come and join us. Come and join the conversation. And yes, don't be shy. Like, jump in. And you never know who you're going to meet. Like, again, it's a thing. It's a continuous interaction. So we want to see you more. We want to hear from you. We want to open up the conversation. Last year, we also had some more difficult conversations about being childless, for example. That was also part of the submissions. So you can find some of these writings on the website in really great papers. I encourage you to read those as well for another exchange and boost in ideas. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm good. Thank you so much, Dr. Travis Gray.
Thank you,
Great
Dr.
session.
Lucci. I appreciate you having this conversation with me.
Yeah, pleasure. Ciao.
You're thinking, who is this man talking? I'm talking to you. You are the realest one you know. And if you need a real